too. So there, she's like, I would love to do a project with you. Why are you working here? Why are you not going by the name you were given at birth? And, you know, I was adopted, so everybody knew that. And so a couple months later, I get the job for Cox Communications. And if you don't know what Cox Communications is, it is a company that does cable, internet, home phone, and other things like that. They do streaming as well. And one day I am working at work, and it was my third day on the job, and my computer was malfunctioning. My headset wasn't working properly, and with the company that I was working with at that time, we had to provide our computers, our own headsets, which I don't mind, whatever. And I get this name across, and at first the name looks familiar, and I, answer the call, and he goes, Ayla. And I said, no, sir, my name is Topanga. If you can't hear me, I understand, it's my headset. And I butchered this dude's name. It was something started with an L, and I was calling him Lyman. And I could not for the life of me, because the screen on my computer was cutting off the last name. And you have to say first and last name to verify. And you have to verify, information to make sure you're talking to the right person. So I'm sitting there, and I am verifying that information, and he goes in and he goes, Ayla, how long have you worked there? Because he was still convinced, even though I had told this homeboy, and it was my brother-in-law. And I said, sir, my name is Topanga. I am going to be the one assisting you, and da-da-da-da-da. And he kept calling me Ayla. And I was like, what the heck is going on? So I say, okay, I just go with it. She's like, don't correct him. You've told him your name twice. If he wants to call you Ayla, just go with it. So I'm like, okay. So I go with it. I'm like, okay. So I started all over again. I said, hey, my supervisor's listening to this call. And he goes, I don't understand why you have to work. I don't understand when you have a loving family. He goes, your sister may not be here anymore, but we're still family. And I said, I appreciate that. I said, I really got to stand on my own 2 feet. And he goes, if you're in some kind of trouble, I can help you out to the best of my ability financially. If you need me, I'm here. He goes, but don't, and I said, because at first I didn't recognize that it was my brother-in-law, so I'm like, oh, how did your spouse pass away? Because I'm trying to show empathy, because my boss loved it when I showed empathy. And I said, hey, and he goes, you know how she passed. And I was like, oh. So I'm looking through the account, because I'm like, maybe it will say. And I said, oh, how'd she pass? And he was like, a skiing accident. And I'm starting to put 2 and 2 together that this is my brother-in-law. And he's like, and I said, I'm so sorry for your loss. I could only imagine how that feels. And this was 2 months before James passed away. So I hadn't experienced that grief yet of losing a significant other. And I said, my heart goes out to you. And he goes, I said, oh, I'm in Las Vegas right now. And that's what I would tell him. I was like, hey, I'm in Los, because we could not give our location. And he always would say, I have a special set of skills and I will hunt you down. And I was like, okay, that sounds stalkerish. And so one day, after I had stopped working there, he got a hold of my supervisor, and he asked my supervisor if I still work there, and my supervisor goes, no, she actually went to a different company. She works for Harley, and she does all this, because I would still keep in touch. So one day, I was sitting at my desk and my nephew's account pops up. Didn't realize it was my nephew at first until I get on the phone with my biological mother. I immediately told a supervisor that I could not work this account. I told my supervisor, and I was like, hey, I can't work this account. I did work the account because nobody could take the call. But I said, for future reference, I should not be working this account or the other account because him and his brother both had accounts. And I said, I did take the payment. I will put it as an unable to pay. He's like, you can take it this one time, but I will make sure you never work this account again. So one day, my nephew calls in and asks for me, and they tell him, hey, she's on a call with somebody else. Because technically, I'm not supposed to work those accounts. And I did go to a supervisor and I did tell them. So after I told them, they said, okay, we'll remove that account from you. And I said, I have gotten them an extension. If you don't want to give me credit for that extension, you don't have to. But nobody could take the call. And so they said, so my boss live listened the whole call just to make sure I was doing what I would. And I would never give my nephew special treatment. They bought that Harley. They convinced my sister and biological mother to be put on the account, and I had to sit there for an hour and explain to my biological mother, and I don't think she realized it was me on the other end, that this is a simple interest loan. Interest is occurring daily. We don't have a grace period. And I'm explaining everything to her, and she's like, what are you talking about? Everybody has a grace period. And I'm like, well, certain loans do not. And so after I say that, she kind of goes, I'm going to disown. And she said the person's name. And she said, I'm going to disown him. And I'm like, please don't do that. Don't disown your grandson. And she did not know the whole call that I was actually the one taking them. I did actually talk to my biological sister, and I did, tell her. I tried to explain. I butchered her name, and I don't know why my computer, every time I talk to a family member, my computer messes up. I don't know why. It's like, okay. So, fast forward, I get a call from my old boss, and she's like, hey, you really need to call your brother-in-law. He's worried about you. I have not spoken to my brother-in-law since my sister's passing, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to be calling because he is in a new relationship with somebody else. And I just feel like that would be overstepping, and I don't feel like I should do that. I don't talk to my sister who's still living. We have not spoken in years, but she would always come to my work and she would always, are you happy? Are you... My nephews came to my work and told people that I was their stepmother. Yes, things like that do happen to me, and they happen periodically, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna get off here.